Good afternoon and welcome to the Benefits of Mentoring. My name is Margot Smith and I'm Regional Director New South Wales and ACT for Governance Institute. This afternoon I have the pleasure of welcoming Pauline Wern to discuss the benefits of mentoring with us and also talk about the Governance Institute mentoring program that we have coming up. Firstly, I'd like to introduce Pauline. Pauline is the Principal of Membina Career Development Services, which she founded in 2006, offering personal and executive coaching, workshop facilitation and mentoring programs. Over this period, Pauline has worked with a range of industries, including mining, not-for-profit and financial services, where she was responsible for career services programs at Finsia. Pauline played an integral role in the program, holding responsibility for program management at Finsia, also workshop facilitation, mentor-mentee matching and corporate relationship management. Pauline has a Masters of Education, Bachelor of Arts and is a qualified workplace trainer and assessor. Pauline is very pleased to be bringing her mentoring program experience to Governance Institute, and we're very pleased to have her with us. So Pauline, tell me a little bit about the benefits of having a mentor.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Margot. In terms of why have a mentor, one of the key points is that the mentor is objective. So rather than having a vested interest in the mentee in terms of managing them or having P&L responsibilities and things like that, they're completely objective. So their goal is to actually just support you as an individual in the goals and career development that you're after. One of the other key aspects is that they have a completely different perspective. This perspective broadens your range of opportunities. It is different in that you may have worked in an organisation or within a sector of the industry for some period, but they'll have something new to offer. So that new perspective is something quite unique to them. The other thing that they'll give you is a range of opportunities by opening up networks, opening up different sectors, opening up just a scope of discussion and ideas that you may not have had within your current circle. The other thing they do is give you opportunities to grow and stretch, and this leads to the next 2 points of support and a safe environment. As a mentor, their job is to support you, to provide opportunities for you to try out different ways of leading, different ways of managing, different ways of processing within the guidelines that you need to function within your organisation, but they might have different strategies that you can just bring to the fore and talk them through, have discussions and just play around with concepts without it having a major effect on you in a negative way, because they're actually there to be your sounding board and your guide and all of that. The other thing that they'll do in the safe environment is provide feedback. And this feedback isn't to do with your performance reviews and things like that, but they can give you feedback on the way you're approaching your career, the way you're approaching different challenges and things that you're discussing with them, and giving you some feedback in a very safe and supportive way, but also in a very honest way. So I think the no vested interest, that variety of perspectives and providing a safe environment are the 3 key things to having a mentor.
Great. Sounds like everyone would benefit from a fresh perspective and a bit of a sounding board. Tell us what the benefits of a structured program are as opposed to a more distinct, informal setup. Why have a structured program?
Sure. Lots of people have informal mentors, and they have mentors that they don't even realise are mentors. They're just people who have been part of their world, who have offered advice or given them caring, listening ear. With a structured program, though, you have a defined period of time in which you're focusing. So that time frame impacts everything else about the program. So you have a start and a conclusion, and that in itself allows you to be very focused for a finite period of time on specific goals that you want to deal with. And the goals are usually around career or leadership or advancement in some way. So that's what we find in these career mentoring programs that are outside workplace programs. The time frame also creates its own momentum. So we have recommendations that we share with the participants around the amount of contact they should be having with their mentor or their mentee throughout the period of the program, and that in itself drives it forward. The other thing about a structured program is that in between each one-to-one session, there's usually some homework, for want of a better word, where the mentor will request that the mentee do some research, do some activity, try some different things, and then report back. So there's a sense of accountability in the program. It's very easy in an informal situation to just kind of catch up over coffee and wax lyrical and chat about whatever you want. But because you have a finite period of time, it's much easier to have very directed conversations, having agendas for each meeting. It doesn't need to be formal, it can be quite informal and flexible and friendly, but there is a sense of urgency, particularly with a 12-week program like the Governance Institute is providing. The other thing that the structured program gives you is a network of both mentees and mentors. Even though each mentee will be matched to one particular mentor, from my experience, one person can't actually tick every box that a mentee has. So through the networking events and through the contact lists and things like that that are part of the program, you're given a broader network of mentors who have already signed up to contribute. And again, from my experience, I've found that mentors are very, very generous with their time and are prepared to catch up for a coffee and for you to get a different perspective whilst maintaining your own one-to-one mentor relationship. The network also happens with the mentee peers and for the mentor peers. Support each other, broaden perspectives again. The other thing that a structured program gives you is support. So that's going to come from the Governance Institute. And as the facilitator and as staff running the program, and the staff of the Governance Institute will actually give you support throughout. So there's tools and strategies to make the most of it. The workshops help with that. The resource guide helps with that. But sometimes along the way, people get bogged down or they get a little bit confused or stuck, and we can provide that additional support.
So it sounds a lot more defined and a lot more milestones than more of an informal program.
Absolutely. There's definitely a sense of completion. For some people, that time frame is all they're wanting. They're just wanting a discrete, specific goal that they want some support with. That's not to say that their mentor won't become a professional associate, professional friend for the rest of their career, but the contact will change. It will lessen. It won't have that same urgency to it.
Because I suppose to some extent we could all progress our careers in one way, shape or form, but there's possibly some blockages or that accountability, as you say, that helps us go to that next level at this time.
Absolutely,
okay.
Because every mentee will come into the program with their own specific needs, and that's what we match to. And the other thing about a structured program is because it's based on the individual's needs, it doesn't matter what stage of your career you're at, there's an opportunity to learn from someone else. So previously I've worked with mentees and mentors who have been well into their 50s as mentees who are looking for board opportunities, or they're already growing business and they want to get a different perspective on how to take it that step further.
And I think that sometimes people think it might only be for, you know, emerging professionals or your first career step, but really what you found, isn't it, that, you know, it's any stage of your career transition. It might be returning to work, it might be between jobs, but it also might be your first job.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And Margot, Linda has put a question here about how the matching works. So maybe now's a good time to move into this slide.
Great, yeah.
Sorry?
Yeah, tell us a bit more about how mentoring actually works then.
So the matching process and the match between mentee and mentor is absolutely pivotal. And if we get that wrong, it's a very limited experience for both the mentor and the mentee. So quite a bit of time is taken over the matching. So the first start of the matching process is in the application form and CV that mentees send through, and in the CV that a mentor sends through. So on the application form, mentees, you'll be asked for some specific goals that you want to work on in the program. Based on those, you will also be giving us an indication of the type of industry, the type of role, the type of mentor themselves that you'd be interested in working with. So my job in the matching side of things is to make sure that I really, really understand what it is that you're after and not make assumptions. So we will have a conversation over the phone. In that conversation, there may be things that you've since thought of since you put in your application form where it would be useful for you to actually tell me what it is that you want to get out of the program. Now, as this is the first time for the Governance Institute to be providing a structured mentoring program, it's most likely that I'll also have a conversation with the mentors just to get a feel for what they're like, what they're interested in contributing, and a bit more about their background if I have any areas that I'm not quite sure on, because there's going to be a very broad base of mentor experience coming into the group. So after we've had an initial conversation, I'll do a physical process whereby I'll take application forms and CVs and try and align them and come back to the mentee and give you a couple of choices, hopefully a couple of choices. Sometimes it's just so obvious who you should be matched with, and that's what I will recommend to you. If you're not happy with the recommendations, we'll make sure that we keep searching for appropriate mentor until we've got as good a fit as is possible. I also know from experience that when mentees put who they would like to be matched with, they tend to have quite the wish list at times, and so we need to keep it within the realms of reality. And the mentors who are signing up to give their time and experience freely and generously. So we will work on the breadth of experience that we have from the mentor pool. A match won't be deemed a match until the mentee is happy. And for those of you who are mentors in the teleconference, I'm sorry, it is really all about the mentee because it's their goals that we're looking to. Sometimes I will ring mentors and just check that they themselves believe that it would be a useful match and that there would be some value for both parties for that match to occur. So it's a very consultative process, but also a very time-consuming process. And I have had about 7 years' experience of matching mentors and mentees, and about 500 people so far matched or more. And so certainly the great majority have been quite happy with the match, but we will have room to manoeuvre because sometimes on paper it sounds great and sometimes in reality there's just a personality disconnect, and we will do everything we can to make sure that that all works well. Because the way mentoring works is based on a relationship. It's a professional relationship where a mentor has the experience, the know-how, the insight in a particular area or two that the mentee is after. Usually the mentor is older, but not necessarily. If you're wanting to transition into a particular area, you may not need someone with 30 years experience in that area. You may need someone who's done a transition and did it 5 years ago. So it all just depends on what the need is. But the relationship is really key, and part of the workshop is, and the networking events are around how to build that relationship as an appropriate mentoring relationship. The other aspect of mentoring is that it's very goal-driven. It's goals from the mentee that drive it. They are the agenda, they're the focus. However, mentors often come in with goals too, and the goal might be, I want to learn from someone who's more tech savvy than me, or I want to understand what it's like starting out now, because in my organisation we have a whole heap of new members to this organisation and this industry, so how can we support them? So even though the mentee has their goals that we focus on, the mentor often has some goals that they also want to develop. And so therefore mentees have a great opportunity to sharing their insights and experience as well. The mentoring relationship is driven from conversation. It's not driven from being told what to do by your mentor. It's actually about a two-way conversation where ideas are thrown around, played around with. Sometimes the mentor may play devil's advocate to really get the mentee to think, but it's done in a supportive, good-natured way to really stretch and help grow the mentee. But it is conversation. That's the foundation of it. The other crucial aspect of mentoring, and for it to work well, is that the conversations are held in confidence. It's very, very difficult for both a mentor and a mentee to be open and share their perspective if they can't trust the other person in the relationship. So confidentiality is absolutely crucial in all of that.
So Pauline, I think it's probably after having had a chat about the matching process and mentors more broadly, I mean, should we do a bit of a poll in terms of people reflecting on what they think the most important characteristic of a mentor is?
I think that would be a great idea.
So if everyone would like to select what they think the most important characteristic of a mentor is. And while everyone's doing that, so Pauline, that was a pretty staggering number. You think you've done about 500 matches in your 7 years?
At least, yeah.
Phenomenal. I think I've maybe reflected before when we've been talking that when I've seen you do the process or talked about the process, it all seems a bit like reading tea leaves. You have this way of bringing it all together and having a sense of who will be a good match.
And certainly that wasn't necessarily the easiest thing to start off with, but it was certainly something that grew, and the key reason why we have the consultation rather than making an arbitrary ruling about who goes with whom. Yeah. So it's very important to actually really kind of understand the layers of what people are needing.
And also, I suppose, your experience in that process, having seen 500 people go through it before, because what we think we need may or may not always be what we need.
Absolutely, and quite often I'll be saying, now how open to you are you to suggestion, or I'd like to go a little bit left of centre here, and there'll be reasons for it, and I'll explain those reasons. But, you know, I think in my final year, out of, I think there was, you know, 110 people or something, we didn't have any relationships fall apart. So, you know, the vast majority have worked really well in terms of getting it right and taking the time to get it right and working both with mentees and mentors to make that happen.
Yeah, great. So it looks like there's a fair portion of people that thought the advisor role was the most important role in that poll, which I think that they're probably on the right path. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. But what I would say around the advisor role is, as advice is one thing because you get to choose whether you accept it or not. The danger is if you think that the advice from the mentor is the be-all and end-all and is a should or a must. They're kind of words that we don't want mentors to use, but we do like for them to give you advice on what's worked for them in the past, what they understand to be happening within the industry and those sorts of things. So certainly advice, you know, that's why we want someone who's more experienced than we are. So I completely understand why you would go down that path.
And I think even as someone who's mentored before personally, I think I've had to understand they're not charting my course, they're charting their course. So it's about that coaching and mentoring role as opposed to, you know, here's what I did and follow my path.
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Should we try another poll?
I think that would be good.
So along the lines of the question of how important is it that your mentor not work for a direct competitor? What does the audience think about that question? We've got a few there. Coming out slightly stronger of little importance. Yeah, bit of a mixed bag. Pauline, what are your thoughts on that particular question?
I'm actually quite surprised by that response. Traditionally, it's been very important to avoid direct competitors, but it very much depends upon why you're wanting to have a mentor. So I think if it's because you're looking for a new job, then we have to be a little bit careful. But if it's because you want someone who really understands the type of work that you do within the type of organisation that you're in and the types of areas that you'd like to move into, I understand why it wouldn't be important, and there'd be an advantage in someone understanding closely how it works. So, for example, in financial services, you know, we would avoid matching mentees and mentors from the Big Four banks, because one of the things that it did was it actually created inhibition for the mentors more than the mentees to be able to talk about things. So we do have to take into account the needs of both. Sometimes the mentors would say that they're not comfortable with it, but there's also some value in having worked in similar areas before. But again, it depends on why you're wanting to be a mentee.
And possibly what your role is. So, you know, if we're talking about a risk manager versus governance advisor versus a company secretary, it may be helpful to speak to your peers in an organisation that understands that area. But yeah, just part of that whole matching process, I suppose, and having an open conversation with yourself.
Well, certainly makes it easier for me in the matching process if there's not major issues around direct competitors.
Now, I think while we're on a bit of a poll roll, should we maybe do one more?
Sure.
So, along the lines of the question, what do you think is the key to a suitable mentor match? Yeah. So respectful, good rapport, and is where I want to be in the future is probably the key ones there. Anything to add, Pauline, on that?
Doesn't surprise me. I think that the key there is the good rapport, in that if you don't connect with your mentor, it's very, very hard to have useful mentoring conversations. So rapport is really important. And I think respect comes out of the good rapport. Certainly in terms of the ambition around where you want to be in X number of years, that's quite often an underlying determiner for people in terms of the type of mentor that they would want, and that's why we look at goals that are not just for right now but into the future. And sometimes the mentors have been where you want to be in 5 years and have even moved sideways or further on from there, but their current role may not be completely aligned, but they may have had 10 years being where you want to be in 5 years' time or something, so they really understand it. So I'm not surprised by the responses, and again, that makes for a very good attitude coming into mentoring.
So it makes sense to take the time to build that rapport early on.
Definitely. Again, even though one of the things we'd recommend is that you take at least the first session of just getting to know each other and talking generally about goals, that rapport builds up over time, and the rapport builds up through that ongoing accountability, engagement, respect, confidentiality.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so let's talk about how Governance Institute program is going to work. Pauline, tell us more.
Well, I hope I've got this right. Certainly, the first thing for mentees is that you send through your application and your resume. And I know that there's information about the program on the Governance Institute website, and that you can also email through if you have any queries about the program. So the application form and the resume need to be sent in by the closing date, which from memory is the 3rd of October. So it's just before the long weekend. Then we go into the matching process, where I'll be in touch with you. I will have done a first run from your application and your resume, as I said, and then we'll start the conversation. Once you're deemed a match, the Governance Institute will require payment for the program, and again, it's probably best not to take payment before the match is made, because we need you to be happy. So payment will be taken before the program starts, obviously, and at least a week in advance you'll be sent information about the workshops, the networking, and the calendar of events. This program, because it's going from November through to February, and there's a gap of time during the January Christmas period, the program is actually a bit longer than the 12 weeks. It's going to be about 14 weeks. But that's to make sure everyone has some time out. But the reason I've put here, how does it work with the calendar of events, is the events are for specifically mentee only, mentor only, or combined sessions. And the combined sessions are panel discussions and networking events. And the workshops are designed for either group to actually focus on what they need to know in order to have a successful program. Midway through, we'll look at the progress that has been made, things that we need to adjust, pooling resources and ideas and strategies that have been used, and making the most of it. Question again, thank you, Linda. The time commitment, the workshops are an hour and a half, and the networking functions are either 2 hours or an hour. The networking, you don't need to stay for the whole 2 hours, but obviously if you want to, you're most welcome to. We've tried to make sure that the structured event times have limited impact on your work day. So, Margot, are you happy for me to go into a bit of detail here about timing?
Yep.
Okay. So the first workshop for mentees happens at 7:30 in the morning and finishes at 9. And then that evening at 5:30 there's a networking function. For mentors, it starts at 4 o'clock. At the midway point, we start at 4 o'clock for the mentees, 5:30 for the mentors, and the mentees get to go home at about 6:30. The finale is 5:30 to 7:30. So we're trying to limit the impact on your workday because we understand that there's a challenge to everyone, both mentors and mentees alike, making time available. Now, in terms of the one-to-one conversations, what we'd recommend is a minimum of 2 hours per month. Now, the program is 12 weeks, but what we're wanting mentors to give you is about 8 hours of mentoring conversations. And so that one-to-one session is completely flexible. So mentees and mentors work out between themselves when, where, and the frequency of their catch-up. So it might be that they meet on a weekly basis for 45 minutes or a half an hour, or they meet fortnightly for an hour to an hour and a half. It really depends on you, but what you're looking at is a minimum of about 15 hours over a 12-week period.
And all of those information, all of those times and dates are on our website at the moment.
Yep. And the structured events are on Thursdays. Again, a question about specific days. So that's how the program works. So the one-to-one time with mentees and mentors, as well as some structured events. The mentors obviously need to send us their CV. They need to make themselves available just as the mentees do. And the mentors also need to try and commit to as many of those events as possible. One of the things that I've been asked frequently is why mentors mentor? So Margot, thank you for shifting to this slide. So for those of you who are online with us now who are interested in being a mentor, what I've been told, and certainly from my experience as a mentor, and I'm sure Margot would agree with this, is that the thing that's great about mentoring is an opportunity to give back. So those who are successful in their careers have had people who have helped them along the journey as well, and it's an opportunity to actually give back to someone else or to their member organisation that supported them to influence and enhance the career of someone else. The investment and influence that a mentor gives is given freely and it's given generously, but it's this fantastic opportunity to allow someone to learn from the successes and the challenges that a mentor has faced throughout their career. That wisdom and insight can provide new strategies, new directions, new learning, ways of processing information, ways of dealing with people, new self-insights as well as professional insights. Because in the process of mentoring, mentors need to reflect upon what it is that they do and why they do it and how it works, and whether they themselves need to make any adjustments. But also for them to be able to articulate why it is that they do things in a certain way and how come that's been successful. And so that opportunity of sharing creates learning for them also as they reflect upon their own experience. They will also, whether they want to or not, learn from their mentee. Because it's a two-way relationship and it's a mutually beneficial relationship, mentors who are successful as mentors are very open to the learning that they're going to receive through the process of being a mentor as well as from their mentee. Categorically, from my experience, mentoring has been deemed a very positive experience for the mentor. Previously with Finsia, we had mentors sign up program after program after program because they got so much value out of it and enjoyed the process of contributing so much. And I know from mentors who, outside of that program, who do it in other programs, whether it be with ARI, so the Human Resources Institute, or AICD, or whoever it is, and particularly within structured workplace programs as well, their experience has been very positive because they get to learn, they get to grow as well as the mentees. Now, okay, there's a question here from Nicholas about the networking functions having a set discussion topic and should mentors assist in suggesting topics. Absolutely, and absolutely. The networking function to start off with at the first workshop is very much about getting to know each other and having the matched pair introduced to each other. But the midway and the final are very much more structured in terms of panel discussions for questions, and we will certainly be asking mentees and mentors for those topics, as well as at the finale we'll be looking at what has been learned, what has been achieved, and what are steps forward. So we'll be asking mentors to contribute to those discussions as well. And these events, even though they will have some structure component, will also have an opportunity to work the room. So, Nicholas, I hope that answers your question. Is there a minimum level of seniority that is expected of a mentor? Yes, there is. What we would expect is that mentors have a minimum of 10 years experience and at least 5 years of that within a leadership, management, strategy, director type capacity. If there are new grads, they don't get matched to a company secretary usually, unless that company secretary is specifically wanting to work with someone who's brand new to the industry. But what we tend to do is look for those mentees who are quite senior, having very experienced and senior mentors and so on. So there's a bit of a structure to it to make sure that there's not a huge gap in terms of knowledge or experience or skill. Lorna, I hope that's answered your question.
And by new grads, Pauline probably means undergraduate degrees rather than our graduate diploma.
Yes, sorry, undergrad degrees, yeah.
Okay.
So there are some next steps, Margot.
Yes. So for anyone who wants to participate in Governance Institute's mentoring program, we have a section on the website. If you head to Governance Institute's website, there's a learning page, and at the bottom there's a mentoring tab. On that mentoring tab, it's a broader area, so you can click within the information about New South Wales specifically for this program. There you can download the application form, and you send your application and CV to us if you're applying to be mentored or to be a mentee. And then there's a matching conversation that happens, as Pauline outlined before. It's important, if you're considering participating in the program, to diarise the event dates now, which are on the web page for the New South Wales program, and then commit to the mentoring process. So get in boots and all and get the most out of it that you can. So really, as Pauline mentioned before, we are taking applications over the next 2 weeks. So applications close on October 3rd to enable us to have enough time to match before the first session begins on the 13th of November. So if you're interested, have a look on the website there, and there's the email address, New South Wales @ to send your application forms or to ask us any more questions that you may have.
So, I just want to make one more comment about the committing to the process.
Yeah.
So when people are considering, downloading an application form, checking out the website and the information, when we talk about the success coming from being committed to the process, and as Margot said, you need to kind of engage with it, boots and all, like really throw yourself into it. Beyond a measure of doubt, the more you put into the process, the higher the reward for you as the participant. You will get so much more out of it if you're committed to the conversations, committed to being prepared for those conversations, committed to attending the events that we're running for you so that you get to have different exposure, different experiences, and the more you give, the more you'll get. I know it sounds trite, but it's absolutely true. If you think your mentor is going to chase you as a mentee, you're sorely mistaken, because you really, as the mentee, need to drive it. And I'll be telling the mentors that it's not their job to chase you, because it's your goals, your buck. You need to actually make sure that you're engaged with it to make sure that you're getting the value out of it that you really want.
We've had a question about how many participants we're expecting. The programs can have anything up to 30 or 35 participants. We're probably expecting, because it's the first time we've done it, in the vicinity of around 10 participants. So it will most likely be quite interactive. But at this point, we're open for applications, so it could be any number.
More the merrier.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Linda. I'm glad it was helpful.
Any other questions before we sign off? So this is the first program. Thanks, Angeline. Next year, we're likely to be continuing the program in Sydney and hopefully in other locations. So it will be, this is our first program, as I said, so we don't know exactly how many programs we'll deliver next year, but it will also be dependent on the demands that we have. Okay, well, thank you so much for your time today, Pauline. Great to have you on board, and thank you everyone for coming along to hear more about the benefits of mentoring and also more about Governance Institute's program coming up. And please do log on to the website and get in touch.
Thanks very much, Margot.